Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about a video that I stumbled across on YouTube when researching into a festival that I was considering going to this year called the Púca Festival. This video was very against the festival and was frankly pretty rude and disgusting to the people who were attending the festival as well as putting on the festival. Um, and there were also a lot of things said that were complete misinformation about the Fairfolk and the Tuatha And as someone who researches the Fae, I have extensive knowledge about the areas that were incorrect in this video. So I wanted to sit down and discuss everything that was incorrect that was stated in this video because I think people are afraid of what they don't understand. They want to label everything that is outside of their realm of knowledge and understanding as something evil, satanic, whatever. And I think that it's very important that we deconstruct that and that we bring to light what is actually true and what the actual history is. So this video is by the Irish Society for Christian Civilization, and it is called Catholics Pray to St. Patrick to Crush the Pagan Púca Event. And I want to say no direct hate to this organization. I think that anyone has the right to believe what they will religiously. I think all religions should be respected. But I do want to say that they were very unkind in their disrespect for other people's religions, and it truly bothered me. It made me very upset. But I please ask that anyone watching this video does not send any hate to this organization. Because that's not okay. The way to bring about peace between religions and bring about understanding is not by having conflict with each other. It's not through hate, but through love, understanding, acceptance, and the pursuit of knowledge. So let's go ahead and get started on this video. I'm going to be pausing as misinformation is stated to correct it, as well as make a few comments here and there about just certain things that could have been said differently. Let's phrase it that way.
Is from the underworld.
These are evil entities, evil spirits that were never popular in their time when they were.
We're going to get back to that. That statement is not correct.
There are 4 entities that have been invoked throughout this Púca festival. And the first of those entities is the Púca himself, who is a fairy or a demon, who is known to be to invoke children and leave behind changelings.
Okay, so this is the first bit of misinformation that really needs to be discussed. First of all, the terminology for the Fairfolk is a bit all over the place because of the erasure of the fairy faith and the beliefs that go along with it. Terminology can be difficult, but the Púca is not generally, through those who study this type of culture, is not generally seen so much as a fairy as being part of the general category and group known as the Fae. Because there's a pretty significant difference between Fae creature such as the Púca and other types of Fae that would be considered fairies. And it's also important to note that fairy is one of the most offensive words you can call this group of beings. It's the origin of the word is very nasty. It is not seen as a kind thing. Even calling these creatures Fae at times can be seen as offensive. But I think it's important that we understand the terminology here. Another thing I wanted to mention was I don't know what invoking children means. I'm assuming this is alluding to stealing away children, as it later mentions the changelings. And something really important here is that Púcas actually have no relation to changelings. And another thing that's said here actually is it refers to the Púca as a singular being. That's actually pretty heavily debated, whether or not it's one being or multiple. And I'll kind of get into that in a minute. But Púcas have no relation to changelings whatsoever. Changelings are an entirely different Fey race. And personally, I don't believe in the stories of children being stolen away and replaced with changelings. Personally, I believe that this is an early explanation for disabled children, especially those who are mentally disabled, have disabilities such as autism, ADHD, that type of thing, because we did not understand what that was early on. So these parents would think that it was some kind of that their child had been replaced, right? Because they were acting what these parents would consider out of characters from their neurotypical viewpoint. So it's important to keep in mind that changelings have a very ableist backstory, and that's why I personally don't believe in changelings in that matter. I believe that the majority of changeling stories are just stories of people's either mental or physical disabilities or mental illnesses in the cases of in which someone believes that they're an adult in their life has been replaced. I believe that that is a matter of a mental illness or a mental health challenge that they're going through that causes them to act out of character. So, first of all, changelings, almost certainly the majority of those stories are false and have no actual backing. And second of all, changelings have no association with the Púca. That's not been recorded. Púcas are known to be shapeshifters, but they're not changelings, and they do not associate with changelings. And Púcas themselves, when you read into the lore of Púcas, are not particularly malevolent fae in the majority of cultures. There are some that very much fear the Púca, but many others see it as a much more benevolent fae. They are known to actually occasionally warn of oncoming trouble, such as other more malevolent fae. And they actually are not known to ever harm a person. They will sometimes take people on terrifying rides through countrysides and will basically scare the life out of someone, but not literally. So they will scare you, but they're not known to actually kill people. And I think the reason that Púcas in some cases get a bad reputation is because they're very similar to Kelpies, which are actually cannibalistic and will drown and eat you. But they're very different. They just both happen to be shapeshifters that shapeshift into similar beings and are also both pure black. But when you actually look into the lore behind Púcas, they are not evil, and they're certainly not demonic, as is being claimed. They've actually been known to appear and hold fairly normal conversations before leaving. They're not evil beings. I personally don't believe that any Fae are evil beings. I believe that they have a different culture to us humans, and that is why we see them differently, because we don't understand their culture. But anyway, let's continue on.
To leave behind changelings, followed by Morrigan, who is a witch who is of sinister origins and would be the battle would involve.
Okay, so this one bothers me a lot because they don't mention the supposed sinister origins. So the Morrigan, and the beginning part of that is actually very important. It's the Morrigan. The Morrigan is actually often depicted as a triple goddess, meaning that there are three goddesses associated as being her. It's a bit of a complicated thing, and it's another thing that you might actually have to read to understand. But she is of the Tuatha and is, yes, as stated, she is a war god. She is a battle god. But that is a very common thing. That can be seen in Greek mythology, Norse mythology. Every religion that has a pantheon is almost certain to have a war god. That is because war is a very common concept. War has been a concept pretty much as long as humans have been around. And I think to claim that any deity associated with war is inherently terrible is pretty shallow minded and is also pretty dismissive of Christianity's violent history. Even stuff like the Crusades, like that is a case of very extreme Christian violence. And there are so many more things I could point out. War and battle it's not a good thing. It would be great to have peace, but to claim that a deity associated with war and battle is somehow bad for that is very hypocritical, coming from a religion that also has a history with a lot of bloodshed. And another important note about the Morrigan, she's not just a war god. She is the god of fate and of earth and the sovereignty goddess. There are so many more aspects to this goddess, and the way that they're minimizing her is extremely offensive. And I I think it's important that people do research before bashing these entities. And also, the way that she's described as some kind of spirit or entity is not accurate. In the faith that believed in her long before Christianity, she was a Tuatha goddess. She was a very popular goddess, and she was very well liked by her people.
Evoke battle rage, destruction, and war, and followed by the Far Zarok, who.
Now, the Fardarg, this is not one that I had done much research on before this video, so I will say that my knowledge on this one is slightly limited. But this is the only entity that they talk about that I would agree with as being a generally negative entity. The name translates to Red Man, and he is known for just a variety of tricks. He's another one associated with changeling, replacement legends, which, again, I've already spoken on that and how I don't believe in those and find them to be very ableist. But he is known to play tricks. Most of them are along the lines of things like leprechauns, but that I'm willing to give some merit to what's stated about him here. But this is another case in which, and as I'll elaborate on later, the Fae are an entirely different. They're entirely different from humans. They have a different culture. Even small groups within the Fae have a different culture. Even just little troops of Fae have different culture than humans, and we need to understand that when we dive into the history of these beings. I also think that the explanation of him as an entity shows the lack of understanding, simply described as an ominous entity and then just called satanic or pagan again. I don't think that's not showing that you have an understanding of the topic. And having an understanding of a topic, a religion, and a culture that you are actively bashing is very important, because if you're going to be rude, if you're going to offend people, then you should at least have your facts straight.
Is an ominous entity who, again, causes havoc and mischief and malevolence. And then finally, Boan, who's the spirit of the Boyne, again, another pagan entity.
So Boan is another Tuatha goddess, and she is literally just a goddess of the river. I don't understand why she's so heavily demonized. There's nothing in the idea that she's associated with the river that could possibly make her out to be evil, other than the fact that she is a deity from a religion that is not Christian. And I find that to be extremely close-minded and extremely offensive. Because at the end of the day, there are other religions aside from Christianity, and they have just as much right to exist as the Christian religion does. It's very important to respect all religions, and I don't understand why saying these things, I don't understand the mindset of someone who will bash other people's religions. I'm a little at a loss for words in case you haven't noticed here, because I can't understand the mindset of someone who is so terrible to their own fellow human beings just because they have a difference in faith. But let's continue on.
Tonight, Morrigan is being paraded through the town of Trim, and the townsfolk are following her through the town up into the Trim Castle, where they are going to invoke the spirit of Morrigan by the townspeople.
Another note here, again, not a spirit. She's a goddess, as much as that aspect of her was attempted to be erased by Christian colonizers. She's a goddess. She was a goddess of the religion that was there initially. And yes, that would be considered paganism. And I think that it's important that we speak about the definition of paganism and remember that it is just as valid of a religion as any other. But continuing on, this would be a case of invoking a goddess as opposed to invoking some kind of spirit. And from my understanding of this event, they're not trying to invoke these spirits, and we'll get onto that later as there's an interview of a festival goer later on.
People and invoke her in the name of battle rage, war, and destruction.
No, that's just not the goal here.
It's pretty shocking what they're invoking. It's would you call it semi-satanic or just outright satanic?
These are evil entities, evil spirits.
I hate this so much, and I hate having to explain this to people. Satanism and paganism are completely different. The concept of Satan or the devil, or even demons, did not exist prior to the Christian religion. Pagans that lived in Ireland had no concept of the devil or of demons or of Satan. They did not believe in the devil, demons, or Satan because that was not a concept even in their mind. They do not worship Satan because they do not believe in Satan, because Satan is not a part of their religion. They worship completely separate deities and believe in completely separate beings from the Christian religion, because they are not Christian and they are not Satanists, they are pagans.
But were never popular in their time when they were around. They had
That's another point that I have to completely disprove here. They were popular in their time. Definitely the Morrigan and Boann, because they were both goddesses. They were very popular in their time. The Púca potentially less so because of the conflict of opinions about the Púca. I will agree that the Farderig certainly was not particularly well liked. It was most likely infamy, but to say that is completely misrepresenting the Morrigan and Boann, because they were very popular among people of their time. I think what's trying to be said here is that they're not popular among Christians.
malevolence.
It's terrible as well how, especially for children with their innocence, how this is destroying their innocence, because all beauty.
How dare children have a good time?
Leads to God, but ugliness leads to the devil ultimately.
It's absolutely
Once again, there's nothing to do with the devil here. Pagan entities completely separate from any Christian entities.
even the entities and the publicity posters that are around the town, they themselves are sinister looking. They don't encourage they don't encourage any kindness or love, or certainly.
Would you consider the bashing of a religion kindness and love?
I don't carry any Christian message in them whatsoever. Yeah. This is a definite pagan.
Yeah, it's not a festival about your religion. That's why there's no Christian message, because it's not about Christianity.
Festival. It has drawn many people to the.
It may be surprising to some people, but not everything is actually about Christianity. Sometimes people like to celebrate their actual cultures as opposed to celebrating a culture that is not theirs and that they're not a part of.
Town this night and over the weekend, and we will invoke Our Lady's protection on the town this night as part of the Rosary Rally.
And honestly, good on them for doing this, because I think actually interviewing people is like a very respectable thing to do. Getting a perspective outside of your own is a very respectable thing to do, so I'm proud of them.
Good evening. I would like to know your opinion about the Púca festival and how it originated and why you like so much to celebrate it right now.
Hi, how are you guys? The Púca festival originated in Ireland. It's Samhain, which is the origin of Halloween, before Catholicism, which is behind me at the moment, trying to tell us to not listen to nature. Púca.
You can see her frustration, but she is doing such a good job at being kind to these interviewers and being kind to these people who are actively bashing her for just trying to have fun. And I think that's very strong and respectable of her.
Is from the underworld.
Very important correction here to what she's saying. No, just generally no. The Tuatha Danann are not from the underworld. The Púca is not from the underworld. The underworld was not even a concept in the pagan religion. The Druids of Ireland before Christians came, that wasn't even a concept. They had something known as the Otherworld, sometimes also called Fairy, Elfland. There are so many names for this place, but it doesn't look like hell, it doesn't work like hell. The Otherworld is just the place where the majority of these entities live generally and will sometimes cross over from, but it's not hell. There have been a lot of descriptions of it, but it is more like, if you were to think of an onion, the world we live on is one layer of that onion. The other world is just a different layer of that onion, as opposed to being something underneath, as hell or an underworld, or even the Greek concept of Hades would be. That isn't the place where bad spirits go to die. That's just the place where the majority of these entities live from and originate. And living, breathing humans are capable of going to this place and have in a variety of stories of the Fae.
Tuatha Danann live in the underworld, and Halloween around Samhain, the portal opens up from the underworld, isn't it? We all need to mind ourselves. We all dressed up so we don't end up in the underworld, being brought back by the sea and the spirits.
Yes, this is a very important point the organization who made this video never brings up. The reason these people are dressing up this way is because there is a very common belief that on Samhain, otherwise known as Halloween night, people will get stolen away by the more malevolent fairies and spirits and entities. That's why people dress up on Halloween. That's where the concept came from. Because it's believed that if you dress up as something to look like these entities, you won't be stolen away, because they will see you as one of them. They won't see you as something that needs to be brought back to where they're from, because they would already think that you are from there. And also the subtitles fail quite miserably here. She mentions the she, which is just another term for the Fae or fairies. Although more specifically, the she are believed to be descendants of the Tuatha Danann. And that's a very common belief of where many Fae entities are long descendants of the Tuatha right? So I think it's important that that's mentioned here.
On the Púcas.
And her mention of the Púcas, as there are multiple, not just one.
So we're all humans dressed up. We're not the other world, and we're here to stay safe. So
they're staying safe and they're having fun.
This is the portal opening today, isn't it? And
yes, and the mention of portal, that's a very common belief that on Salmon Night, a portal is opened up. That I believe there are a variety of places that they're believed to be portals on Salmon Night, but specifically to the other worlds, that's when portals are believed to pop up and be the strongest. So the idea of dressing up so you don't get stolen away is a very common one. Because the stories of the Fae stealing away people, unlike the Changeling stories where it's an ableist idea of replacing your children, there are actual cases of people being stolen away by the Fae to live in the Fae realm, otherwise known as the Otherworld.
And this all started in Asboy, County Meath, Samhain on the head of Ward Chacla. And this is where these guys live. And it's a very special bit of land where there's a lot of under the earth, two rivers are crossing, there's a lot of energy in the land. So we go and we celebrate it there, and the fire gets started there. Everyone turns their fires off at home in case the Púca and the She and the Tuatha from the fairies find them.
Once again, they don't subtitle the mention of the She. But that also, as was stated, that's also a important measure taken by those who believe in Samhain, and that she's correct on that information.
In their house, and we all collect together in the village at a fire. And at that fire, we all make sure we do our deeds. Anyone owes anyone any money, anyone who needs to have a fight or have a quarrel, you have to have it that night. If you don't have it that night, you don't have any ownership on that fight anymore for the rest of the year.
That's another point that is historically accurate and correct, and also a very good idea. I think the idea of leaving behind old grudges is very important.
What is the spirituality behind the Púca festival? Is there any religious or spiritual background?
I think it's...
As she says, it's history, it's nature. There are pagan influences, certainly, but not everyone here is going to be pagan. And the people that are pagan, so what? They're people too. They're celebrating their religion too. And they have every right to do that, and they should do that, because we're all people. And we all should be able to believe what we want to believe. And the idea that people are being demonized for simply following their faith and what feels right to them is upsetting, to say the least.
History for us, it's nature for us, and I think at the moment there's a resurgence of people liking and enjoying the land and our physical animal instincts connection to the land, which is all we are really. Everything else is the spirituality of something is different for different people. For us today, it's it's enjoyment really, isn't it? It's fun together. This is my niece and my nephew.
As I said, it's fun. This is a very, I would say sensationalized festival celebration. If this were an actual pagan festival, it would be very different. This is something for fun. This is a fun Halloween event for people to be able to enjoy, and that's all it is.
And we're out today and we're just enjoying dressing up and having fun, and with the knowledge that it's local and it's ours and it's Irish festival, it's so enjoyable.
Okay, this is his promotional message, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave some closing thoughts here. I think many of my thoughts on the matter have kind of been stated already, but just to leave no ambiguity in my opinions. Bashing people's religion and just them as people for believing something different than you do is incredibly disrespectful and rude and honestly very unchristian. These people want to preach so much about love and light and, treat thy neighbor as, do unto your neighbor as, you would want them to do to you. That's not what these people are doing. They are being incredibly rude and incredibly disrespectful to people just trying to have fun and enjoy themselves and celebrate some cool old folklore. And I can't fathom what happened in these people's lives to make them such Grinches, to be honest. People are just having fun. And I think that beyond that, though, the treatment of pagan people is really terrible. Not just in this video, it's everywhere. Paganism is so demonized when it is a practice completely unrelated to Christianity. It is a very old religion, and it is a very often noble religion where people are helping each other and taking care of each other, not because their God tells them they have to, but because they're people and they want to treat their fellow human beings with kindness, as we all should. And I think that if you're going to be bashing some celebration like this, if you're going to be trying to, as it says, crush a pagan event, then you should at least have your facts right, which they didn't. So, yeah. It's kind of just the end of my thoughts. Honestly, this wasn't a scripted video. I just wanted to get in here and correct some things because I have knowledge that apparently these people do not, and again, knowledge is very important to improvement, to improving society and allowing people to just be themselves, do whatever they're doing. I'm a little at a loss for words because this is upsetting. I made this video because I saw this video this morning and I was upset by the treatment of the people at these festivals and the words that were being thrown around. I think that seeing this festival and thinking that it somehow worships the devil, whatever, that's fine. I think praying against that is fine, right? You can have your opinions at home. You can pray to your God all you want, but to come out here and just act this way to people who are just minding their own business is pretty low, and I don't think it reflects what the actual Christian religion is about. But I mean, I guess that's it. If any people in the comments know any other videos that have a similar sentiment to this and have a lot of misinformation, I would be more than happy to talk about it and go over the stated misinformation, because that's what I do. I mean, I guess with that, that's all. Any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you disagree with me, please be respectful. Don't be a jerk to people in the comments. Just say your piece like a normal human being, please. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. If this organization happens to see this video and disagrees with me, I mean, I guess reach out. I've got an email. If you want to be more well-educated on the things you're speaking about, please, by all means, ask, because I have been studying this for years, and it's very important to me. So, yeah, I mean, that's about it. Have a lovely rest of your days, guys, and don't let anyone stop you from having fun.